And roll the footage. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Strategy Show. I'm Simon Severino, your host. And today we have husband, father, cyclist, surfer, founder of Fearless Business, leader of coaching programs that can help you slow down, create space, and charge more. And he has also a very special giveaway for us. Hello, everybody, Robin Waite.
Hi, Simon. Thank you very much for having me on the show. Super excited about this.
Thank you for not being surfing right now, but being with us.
Well, you're lucky. Thankfully, not thankfully, I live far enough away from the coast that it's actually quite difficult to get down there. But we've just got in my local town an inland surf lagoon, which I hope is, fingers crossed, opening back up in the next week or two. So soon you'll see the sign back up, gone surfing. You won't be able to get hold of me then.
Beautiful. What are you currently creating?
Well, nobody knows about this yet, Simon. So this is really quite a new thing. But I'm about to write my 6th book, which is solely based on pricing. So people have tried to write books on pricing before and how much to charge for products and services. But I'll be honest, most of them are pretty boring. So mine is kind of an updated, up-to-date version of like the whole mindset around sort of how to charge for products and pricing, what stops people from charging more, and all those sorts of fun things. So that's in the pipeline. I'm about halfway through the first draft at the moment, and that'll be out sort of probably be sort of September, October time, I'd imagine.
We will talk today about how you can find your right price, how you can articulate the value that you give, and also why discounts are bad for your business. Let's dive directly into the right pricing. How can somebody find the right price?
Well, in order to understand how to price properly, you've got to understand like a lot of the psychology and the mistakes which people are making when it comes to pricing in the first place. So one of the most common ways that people price, and we're all told by the experts and gurus, go and have a look at the competition and see what they're getting up to. But the biggest mistake in that is actually assuming that what you see is the right way to do it. So if Robin's looking at Simon, Simon's looking at Stephanie, Stephanie's looking at David, and David's looking back at Robin, and we're all comparing our pricing, well, who's actually set the prices there? And the answer is nobody has. There's no real science behind it. And actually, if everybody in that chain is dramatically undercharging for their products or service, then it means that when it comes back around to me, I'm going to also be undercharging for it. And then economically, like, it doesn't stack up for my business. And I'm left kind of scratching my head going, I don't really fully understand it because everybody else is doing this. So the assumption is wrong in that instance. Like if 95% of people are all charging the same amount, they might actually all be wrong. So we've got to look at whether...
How many of your clients are undercharging? Because I see every week dozens of people who are undercharging, and we usually really push them to mostly double their price.
I would say all of them. Like there isn't anybody out there really. I mean, unless you're like, you know, selling a really heavily commoditized product, like an off-the-shelf product, like a tin of baked beans or something like that, for example. You know, most service-based businesses especially are vastly undercharging for themselves. So pretty much everybody can increase their pricing. It's whether they've got the fear of putting their prices up, because a lot of people are worried about, well, if I did double my prices, you know, everybody's going to run for the hills and they're not going to buy my products or services anymore. But what it comes down to is that they have this fundamental sort of they have lack of confidence in their ability to deliver. And actually, one of the key things which becomes really apparent when they start to go on this journey of increasing their pricing is that they just don't have the data to back up this story which they're telling themselves. And it's the data and that validation process which arms you with the confidence to be able to put your prices up.
Did it ever happen when your clients finally raise the price and go first time out there with their newsletter or however they distribute, that everybody runs away? Because my experience is when I did it, usually it went well from the very first second, but the very first second being getting 3 no's, they go away. And then somebody comes and says, I am the exact perfect person for this. And I ask, why, how do you know? And they said, I know from this person who referred me to you, and they said it's exactly what I need. And what's your experience?
It's exactly the same. I mean, like, customers are like buses. You know, you'll wait for ages for the right one to come along, and then all of a sudden, like, 3 will come along at the same time. And I always say to people, like, a good conversion rate for most businesses is actually somewhere between about 1 in 5 and 1 in 3, so 25 and 33 and a third percent, right? And if you're converting more than 1 in 3, a lot of people kind of kid themselves into thinking that actually I'm a really good salesperson. I've got everybody you put me in front of, I'll close 80 to 90% of them. And I say to them, well, no, because if we doubled your price, could you still get an 80 or 90% conversion rate? And they look at me and kind of go, well, no. Okay, well, that tells me you're not a good salesperson. But actually, what we need to do is, like, imagine that 1 in 5 conversion rate, like exactly like you said. It will be the first 8 out of 10 who say no. It will be the last 2 who say yes. And most people they can't hold their nerve long enough to wait for those 2 people to come along. And it's really interesting when you actually start to look at kind of the, like, break down the numbers in terms of, like, you know, overall profitability. So again, what a lot of people forget to do is they don't, they kind of come up with a good idea for a product or service they're going to sell, and especially in the small business sort of sector, and even still in big businesses, but they never actually kind of run through the numbers. So, and by that, what I mean is, like, if you were to set a goal for as a business, and I'll just throw some numbers out that are easy. So if you wanted to run $100,000 a year business, for example, a 6-figure business, and your product was $1,000, well, that means you've got to sell 100 of those products in order to hit 100K. But a lot of business owners haven't done that very simple piece of maths. And then you say to them, well, actually, could you deliver 100 of those products? Oh, no, I couldn't. Okay, well, how many could you deliver? And if it's, say, 50, so the capacity is like half of what they're actually predicting to hit their financial goal. They're like, well, in that case, if you can only deliver 50, we've got to find a way to double your price. So economically, you know, the numbers, you know, the price of your product or service stacks up to achieve that goal. And most people just don't bother doing that simple piece of maths right up front.
I was the same. When I started my business, I was the same. I wasn't planning like real math and real numbers, etc. Because my statement was, of course, I was avoiding it, but my statement to myself, how I was lying to myself, was, it's just fantasy numbers, so why should I put them up? I will measure every week, and the week are the real numbers, and from that I just try to improve by 10% every week my sales numbers. And that was not the complete truth. I now know you need to do your math, you need to project, but also you need to measure every 7 days to see if this trajectory is really realistic, or if you have to change the activities because they will not lead you there. Now I know that you can have predictable sales, and it starts by exactly doing that math of putting the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days onto a spreadsheet, and then measuring the last 7 days in terms of the main KPIs, the 5 to 8 main KPIs that you need to measure about your sales. But I can remember, I don't want to do it because it's not true. How do you do it with your clients?
So we have we try and keep things as kind of simple as we can. So we measure, what gets measured gets improved. Like you have to have some numbers in the first place to then sort of test and validate against, because if we haven't got that, you don't really know, there's no sense of real purpose in terms of what it is that you're doing. So there are 2 kind of key metrics, what we call, there's lead indicators, which most people are kind of familiar with. So in terms of, like, how many inquiries are we getting in, how many people are booking calls with us, how many people are taking a trial of our product, and those sorts of things. And then there's lag indicators. And what's interesting is actually, so the lag indicators are kind of the actual sales, what money drops out the bottom of the machine at the end of 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or whatever. But we can't actually learn anything from lag indicators, because what's happened is all of the activity is lagged before that, and we're left with sales. So I operate on, I kind of live and die by 3 numbers. I don't know if you can see that, 70, 10, 2, there we go. So it comes from, like, the age-old version of it is pre-internet. It was like, cold calling, 70 calls, 10 appointments, 2 sales. And actually, Google did a study called Zero Moments of Truth. It was originally a white paper. It's now a book. And they worked out for most businesses, actually, these numbers are fairly kind of typical for most businesses. So every business I work with, we start off with those 3 numbers, 70, 10, 2. So we talk about starting 70 conversations with prospective clients. Then underneath that, how many of those people have turned into warm prospects where we've actually sat down and had a consultation or moved them through to the next layer in our funnel. And then finally, we get the 2 sales at the end of it. And what tends to happen then is people will start to sort of compare their business against those 3 numbers. But the mistake people make is like, imagine you've got a target, Simon, and your goal is to sell 2 widgets a month. Now, if you get to the end of the month and you've only sold 1, you can't do anything you can't change that. You can't mess it up and lose that sale, but equally you can't sell anymore. We've got to the end of the month, you've only sold 1. But then that's the lag indicator, but the lead indicators are much more important. So if we get halfway through the month, Simon, and you've maybe only started 20 conversations, you've maybe only booked 3 sales meetings, we already have got a bit of an idea that you're going to fall short of your targets for that month. So there's 2 choices at that point. You can either go, oh, well, we're not going to hit our target and give up. And sometimes there's an appropriate time to do that. If, for example, burnout's about to happen. So if we're pushing too hard and it's just not working, this was quite common during the crisis, for example. People were just pushing and pushing and pushing in a depressed market and the sales just weren't happening. So actually, do you know what? Let's just take it easy. Things just aren't going our way. The other option, though, is hustle mode on. And we go, right, what can we do to get more conversations started? How can we get more people booked into consultations or to the next stage in our sales process and increase those numbers?
I'm curious how you handle it with your clients, because some of our clients say, oh, but 70 per day. Okay, I can do 20 over LinkedIn. I can call 10 clients of last year. I can call 5 friends and ask them for referrals. And I get to 50. But the no is so demotivating. So some of them start by setting the goals to just getting 8 no's per day. So they don't try to get 1 close. They try to get past 8 no's. What's your experience? How to stay motivated?
Actually, one of the best books that I've ever read is it's actually called Go for No. I don't know if you've read that, by Richard Fenton and Andrea Waltz. And so they talk about this exact philosophy around, and one of the examples they use is an insurance salesman. And, they were wondering why they kept on just about hitting their targets, which was to sort of, close 1 insurance sale a week. And what was happening was they worked out that for every 69 calls they made, they got their one client. So what would happen is the insurance salesman in the team, if they made their 1 sale on a Monday, they'd be like, job done. Go off down the golf course and we won't bother getting any more. But actually, when in the book, when they transformed that and said, right, actually, you've got to go out and get 68 no's, what would happen is they'd get their sale on the Monday, but they still had 68, 67 more no's to get. So they would just hammer it. And so all of a sudden, they went from sort of doing 70 calls a week to doing 70 calls a day and getting that 1 sale each and every day. So they actually ended up 5xing sort of their results. So I'm a big fan of kind of going for no. In fact, I like it when clients say no because it's 1 step closer to getting my next yes.
I used to hate the no's because I was coming from a culture of farming and never do hunting. So my first years were just farming, just picking up the phone saying, yes, okay, let's do it. And sometimes no. Then I learned to say more no, but then stuff changed and I had to learn the hunting part and I hated it. What I realized, though, was if you get through that first couple weeks, if you get this momentum that you are describing, things get easier. You have a sales script that works, you improve it, you know the objections, and then it's even fun. Right now, I love it. And I'm missing it now that I'm not doing it so much because I love every single conversation. I have fun there. I don't try to close. I don't go for closing. I go just for understanding and being helpful. And it is, it can be really fun to do. And especially after you have 1 close and then the next 5 calls, they are amazing because you're so relaxed.
Well, I think a lot of people are kind of, they get a bit demotivated by sales because there's a lot of negative connotations to the word sales. And you have double glazing salesmen and estate agents and car salesmen. And there's a lot of like, it's all about the money and the commissions and things like that. And actually for most businesses, like sales is exactly what you've just described. It's like a fact finding mission to work out, is there a good product market fit? And if there's not, like, we don't need to force people into a sale. We just have somebody to refer them on to. And I think when business owners get comfortable with that, like one of the things I always say to people is like, once you've kind of assessed the need and gone through that consultation process, done your fact finding mission, and you get to the end of it, there's only one pitch. It's based on what I've seen. Actually, the package that I would recommend for you is package B, and these are the reasons why. A lot of the mistakes that kind of people make is because like sales is essentially starts to kind of there's a very emotional attachment to it based on their own value systems. So for example, when somebody says at the end of a sales conversation or consultation, Robin, how much does it cost? You see a lot of people who are they shrink like Gollum, because they're afraid of that question. They're really afraid of like having to answer it in case fear of rejection, in case somebody says no, like that. They hate hearing the word no, for whatever reason. Now, I'll be honest, like the reason why we fear hearing the word no, especially in the small business community as well, it's more rife, but actually it's there in bigger businesses as well. Imagine this scenario, Simon, where we're having a conversation and actually, so I'm trying to sell you something, Simon, but if I don't get this sale, I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. I'm not going to be able to put food on the table for my family. And the challenge with that is, as we all know, like in any kind of business, the most important person in that business is the client. Without a shadow of a doubt, 100%, it's always about the client. So if I'm worried about paying my bills, dependent on whether this sales meeting goes well or not, all of a sudden it's about me. And actually that's like a really unethical place to sell from. So a much better way is if we've got the systems and processes in place and we've priced our products so that actually we can sort of take it or leave it as to whether the client says, yes or no to us. And the ones that do say yes, economically, it's going to make, stand up for our business and it's going to drive cash through the business and there's still demand. We're not going to get so dependent on the sales situation. All of a sudden we break that emotional attachment. And the moment you kind of, again, you don't just double your prices and that be that. You've got to stack value. You've got to create a slightly better product in order to justify sometimes the increased price that you're charging. But what it means though is that you kind of remove that emotional attachment to the yes or no, and all of a sudden, you can start to enjoy the sales process. You're not afraid of somebody saying no. You're not afraid of that question of how much, because you're proud of what you're doing. Like I talk about the sales cycle of doom, right? So, and this is again rife in the small business community. Sell, deliver, sell, deliver, sell, deliver, sell, deliver. Oh, I get ill. Oh, I go away on holiday. Now I can't sell. Now I've got nothing to deliver because I haven't sold anything. So, and then, I get better. Get back to it. Sell, deliver, sell, deliver. But the moment you charge more for the same products, it's like your world expands, because all of a sudden you have more time to deliver a better quality product, which drives more revenue, which gives you more time, which means and so actually you can have far fewer clients in a business like that, and you can reduce your conversion rate can drastically reduce, but you can still make more money.
Absolutely. So when we say, hey, what about raising the prices? We have 8 steps to get there. One is to understand better what is really needed. The second is to reduce the number of features that you have to only the one that are really needed right now. The third is to make it real concise and to test it, so to get the exact words that people use, and then et cetera, until you have done the 8 steps. Then you cannot raise the price, of course. But if you have done that homework, that means there is a need, there is your capacity to deliver that, which is disproportionately higher than the cost, and now you have a good combination. Now you should, because you have break free from competition right now, you are not comparable anymore. There is this one solution and it's the best. Now raise your price. What is your experience in that process of making better products with your clients?
So in terms of like the productization process, really what it comes down to is you mentioned there about sort of understanding what your client really wants. So what would be the best outcome or result for a client? So it's actually a story. One of my first coaching clients, and I tell the story in the book, Take Your Shot. He was a golf professional. Okay, so he just does golf lessons, pure and simple. But one of the first things that mistakes he was making, he was asking the wrong questions when a prospective student came into the pro shop. So he was asking questions like, how long have you played golf for? And they're kind of the right questions to ask, but in actual fact, there was no link to the result or outcome. So what clubs do you play for? How long have you played golf for? When can you start lessons? So there's no real attachment to a result or outcome. And I probed him. I was like, come on, there must be a bigger reason. Like, why do people show up for or not show up for golf lessons? And he told me this one story about this time when a guy had just got a new sales role in a 2,500 person company. And the first assignment before he even made his first call was to go and play a round of golf with the CEO of the business. And so this guy, all he wanted to do when he got onto the golf course on the first tee was drive further than him and smash it down the middle of the fairway so that the CEO noticed him. So I was like, great, there's your first product. Let's help somebody to drive 30 yards further than everybody else or than they can currently drive. Let's teach people how to drive more accurately. Let's teach people how to lower their putting average. So for the golfers, and we came up with 5 products like that. The golfers in the room will understand what I'm talking about. Other people are probably hopefully have got an idea. What was really interesting though was then when we defined those 5 products, and I asked him, how long would it take to get any one of those results? So if we sold these 5 products independently of each other, and he said, well, about 8 to 10 weeks. Okay, how could we guarantee that we could do it within 8 weeks? And he said, provided they showed up to each and every lesson and that they practiced 2 or 3 times in between, he said, I reckon I could probably get them that result. And, that would be that. So I was like, great. Okay, so we'll start to draw up a bit of a contract here. And they choose their product, they agree that they're going to practice, they agree they're going to show up to all of their lessons. And then finally, we then got into the conversation about price. And this is where it got really interesting. So we've got a clearly defined outcome with some activities, actions that people have got to do. And at the time, he was charging about £25 per lesson for golf. So per golf lesson. What would happen is on a Saturday, if it rained, anything up to 6 out of 8 of his students just wouldn't bother showing up, and he was taking cash at the end of the lesson. So you can see that his cash flow was getting hammered, by the weather. But having this agreement with people would at least get them along there. They'd get the result. So he said, well, how much do I charge for it? So if you multiply it by 25, okay, you could do that maths and it becomes a £200 product. But he wasn't talking about results and outcomes there. He didn't have a step-by-step process for each of those products. So I said, well, how about we just sell it for $595? And this is where international sign of distress came out. Oh, I couldn't possibly charge that much. All the other golf pros will laugh at me. No, I'll get no students, nobody. And I said, look, hold on a second. You don't know that. You don't know if people won't charge for it. All of the other golf pros are doing it differently. Like, this is totally different to anybody else. So let's just, and I drew him up a little contract using my old design knowledge back in my agency days. And I said, print out 10 of these, leave them in the pro shop, and then just pitch it to the next 10 people. Lo and behold, in the first week, he picked up 3 students on new packages. So like that defining that clearly, that result and outcome for the client is by far and away the most important part of the process of productizing. Beautiful.
Before we go to the next CEO tip, which is how you can articulate your value, and I would love to go to the segment of the show we call the Strategy Award. Whoop, whoop! Because now you can give visibility to one person or firm who is doing things really differently, but in your opinion, doing them right. Who would that be?
So it's actually one of my clients who I've chosen for this. So it's a guy called Middleton, and he comes from a sort of a charity fundraising background, and he's doing a lot of consultancy work at the moment. But there was a really interesting thing which came out of the crisis. One of his friends runs a donkey sanctuary in France, and crisis hits. Obviously, nobody's booking holidays in France and booking these gîtes, and the idea is they come and stay in the gîtes, they feed the donkeys carrots and have a wonderful week away with their children. So of course all that business dried up, and there was a point with this organization where the 7 donkeys were potentially going to go to the abattoir because all of their income dried up and they weren't able to feed the donkeys or pay for the vet's bills or things like that. So it got really dire. And Andrew has this process called friend raising. So whereby you tap into your friends and your networks in order to kind of raise money for good causes. And we all kind of do this anyway. Like Facebook's made it much easier to kind of give money to your friends and help, going off and doing charity cycle rides and fun runs and things like that. But Andrew managed to take this up to the next level and use some really cool tools like Patreon, for example, which is well known in kind of like the vlogging, blogging sort of circuit and YouTube circuit, but it's not necessarily used so much by charities. So he introduced this donkey sanctuary to Patreon. He taught them how to make videos which would really engage people, that would encourage them to share with their friends. So that's where the term friend raising came from. And within 6 weeks, they managed to raise €2,000. It saved the donkeys' lives. They didn't have to go to the abattoir. And what they've also managed to create off the back of this was a sustainable source of fundraising as well. So obviously with Patreon, it means that people are signing up for little, small and often donations, small and regular donations on an ongoing basis. So they've actually found a completely new revenue stream for this, for the Donkey Sanctuary. And Andrew's done this for tons of small sort of organizations and charities. And he deserves an awful lot more credit, I think, than sometimes he gets.
Thank you so much. Now, your CEO tip number 2, articulate your value better. How to do that? So
a lot of business owners really struggle with this this aspect. Sorry, I've got a couple of notifications which are popping up, so I'm just going to, annoyingly, I should have just switched this off before the show, so apologies for that. There we go, that's done now. So yeah, a lot of people really struggle to understand and talk about confidently the results and outcomes they get for their clients. So a little bit like what was going on with Russ, the golf pro. So I kind of introduced my clients to something called the benefit behind the benefit. So you'll have heard that, a lot of the experts will talk about why do you go into a Home Depot store, to buy a drill? And the answer they typically give is, look at me, I'm so clever, it's to drill a hole. But I look at this very differently. When it comes down to being able to articulate your value, you've got to go 7 layers deep in that story. So it's not about the hole. It's not about the plug which you put into the hole to hang the bracket to. It's not even about the painting which you hang on the bracket. Actually, this particular painting, my grandfather and I, we drew it when I was 6 years old. We hung it on his wall, and we used to pretend we were French art critiques and had ourselves in fits of laughter on the floor, like, playing this game. He recently passed away, and he left me this painting in his will. And so do you see what I mean? It's about like going really, really deep into that story and being able to kind of like really 7 layers deep and understand the benefit behind the benefit. So it's not just about one outcome. It's like the knock-on effect of all of those sort of outcomes as we go down. A lot of business owners too afraid to dig deep and get that emotional story out of their clients. And really, it's just a simple process of sitting them down and like talking to them and asking them about what a real difference, your product or service made to them. And keep on asking, keep on digging. It gets a bit awkward, but keep on asking the question why. Like that curious 6-year-old, keep on asking the question why. And you can deeply understand like the emotional benefits behind like why people should buy your products and services.
This goes so deep and it's so important people listen to this. Yesterday, I was talking to people from Google and they have a wonderful slide. They said, look, Simon, most people just target by demographics, and they say, and look how shallow this is. So they have this example where if you say, okay, I'm going for a person who is male and 65 and loves dogs, that you can put in Prince Charles, but also Ozzy Osbourne, and you wouldn't try to sell them the same thing, right? But if you go just by the books and say, okay, targeting demographic, age, geography, one hobby, that's what you get, and that's exactly not 7 levels deep, and it's not exactly not what you want, because you will reach neither of them if you compare them. So super interesting point and absolutely relevant right now to really understand who is on the other side and how can you go deep? What are their fears? What keeps them awake at night? What are their dreams and their goals, and how does this contribute to that? Beautiful.
And again, a lot of business owners, I should add to this, that they're also too fearful around like shouting about the results which they get for their clients. And I actually think, like I called the business fearless, not because it was about being reckless or crazy or anything like that. In business, it's about fearing those things ever so slightly less that are going to get you the desired outcome. Because those things will stop you. And actually, a lot of business owners are just too humble. They don't want to go around bragging about the amazing results which they get for their clients. But we can do it in a humble way still. But you do have to like dig deep and get those case studies, get those reviews, get testimonials like filmed from your clients, because there is nothing better than hearing it from your client's mouth, like how good an experience it was to work with you, what a difference it made to their life and to their world. I have clients who sort of credit me with them getting married. I have them credit me with them having children. Obviously, they did that between themselves. I work with husband and wife partnerships and things like that. They credit me with being able to save up enough money to be able to go and buy a house. And I love telling those stories, because actually that's the difference which I make. I could work with, the big corporates, but you don't always get to see the results down at kind of the grassroots level and the real difference it makes to people. And that's really, really important. I don't tell anybody, get out there and shout about the results you get, but keep them at a human level. It doesn't have to be about money, all the time. It can be about the things which, the improvements to lives, people's lives, which it makes, right down at an individual level.
We have a third CEO tip, why discounts are bad for you. But before we go there, 2 books that inspire you. I know that you are a big audiobook fan.
Massive.
Me too. So yeah, what are the best ones currently for you?
So actually the first book which really inspired me, took me kind of on my journey, kind of understanding product, understanding pricing much more, was a book called Built to Sell by a guy called John Warrillow. So he talks, again, it's like a story about a guy who wants to sell his agency, but realizes his mentor tells him, well, it's not saleable because you're doing too many things. And so it takes him on this journey to sort of mentor him on how he can design his business so that he can sell it. Absolutely fantastic book. And then one of the other sort of most inspiring books which I've read recently, especially with the business twist on it, was Black Box Thinking. So again, it's about this notion that, in order to better understand sort of aeroplane accidents, we have to have the data from the black box. And whilst it's, a terrible tragedy when planes crash, in order to reduce the number of planes crashing in the future, we need that data. But also as a part of that, we also need a diversity of data. So you can imagine if you have, for example, a board where you've got, 10 white middle-aged men, you're going to end up with a similar set of ideas. And actually what that does is it means that there's not enough diversity in thinking in the business, and they're never going to really grow it in the same way that you would do as if you had a diverse board with people of different ages, different genders, different colors of their skin, different upbringings. If you've got 10 different, if you put 10 of the same people in and ask them to come up with 10 ideas to solve a problem, they'll all come up with the same 10 ideas. But if you get 10 diverse people in there, you're going to get 10 different ideas multiplied by 10. So you end up with 100 different ideas. So Black Box Thinking has this whole idea about data and validation, but also diversity. It's a fantastic book if you get a chance to read it.
Cool. And now CEO tip number 3, why discounts are bad for your business.
So this was really interesting, actually. And again, I don't want to kind of, we're in the middle of a crisis, so it'd be kind of remiss to actually kind of pay attention to that. But what I saw when the crisis kicked, day 2 of crisis, everybody's putting in like, fire sale, 75% discounts, trying to get cash in through the door because they're, for the right reasons, but they didn't realize quite how, sort of what a negative impact it would have on their businesses. But so most businesses, good businesses, kind of have a net profit of somewhere between 15 and 30%. So a very simple equation would be if you had a business that was pushing, say, 20% net profit, but then they, in order to attract clients into their business, they start discounting by 20%. Well, naturally, if you do the, very simple maths, it's eroded their net profit just in one simple sort of move. So I did a study with the one of the board of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants and looked at a ton of data. And actually, what was remarkable was that it wasn't, what we discount here just falls off the bottom line here. It was actually more stark than that. So, for example, if a business has a gross profit of somewhere between 30-35%, if you do just a 5% discount, you've actually got to sell 22% more of the same product or service in order to get the same level of gross profit. So you have to work 22% harder just to overcome a 5% discount. So discounts, especially on your core products, can be utterly catastrophic. The reason why most people discount and don't realize that catastrophe, though, is because what tends to happen is there's lots of cash flow coming through the business. And so, they're not maybe discounting all of their products. And so that kind of, it gets kind of caught up in all of the other cash flow in the business. And so they get to the end of the month scratching their head going, why haven't we made any profit this month? Because we've had a load of cash flow. Yeah. And I would say, like, businesses never have a cash flow problem. Cash flows in and it flows out. It's the making more money and keeping it, which is the problem.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book from Mike Mikhailovich, Profits First. Everybody should read that.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Really, because we all learn the accountants and the P&L logic, but that's exactly not the leader logic. It's not business logic. That's what you have to do in order to comply to the rules around you. But if you want to lead a business, it's all about the profits. And how does this 5% become 22%? What's going on there?
It's oh gosh, you're going to ask me to explain the maths. I'm not the accountant who kind of did this study, unfortunately, but essentially, by the time you kind of start to add in direct cost of sales, by the time you start to add in the extra overheads and things like that, like the gross profit margins get eroded much faster. Essentially, that's kind of the simple version of it. But it's kind of like a compounding effect. It's not like business, everybody expects everything to be linear, but actually discounting kind of slowly becomes this compounding effect. So if you were to then move up to same gross profit, somewhere about 30% gross profit, but then double that discount to 10%, it doesn't just go from 22% to 44%. Actually, you have to sell 50% more of the same thing. So there's this compounding effect. Because obviously, if you're not going through a process of reducing your costs at the same time as discounting, the gap closes that much quicker, essentially.
Yeah, cool. So this was CEO tip number 3. Now I am curious, what's ahead of you? What does the future of your business look like?
So I'm in the process of, unfortunately, we got a little bit stalled by the crisis, but we're growing. The plan is to grow Fearless Business up to £1 million a year coaching practice, which will ultimately put me in well within the top 1% in the UK, certainly. I don't know about worldwide. I'm kind of being a bit of a maverick. A lot of coaches get stuck in this kind of field of doing a lot of one-to-one work, and so they run up against these capacity constraints the whole time because it's obviously all based on their time. Whereas for me, I go back to Matthew Said's book. I'm a big fan of kind of diversity. I don't think I'm the best coach in the world. So for me, I'd much rather bring in better coaches than me to deal with specific aspects of the business. So we have 3 other coaches in the program at the moment who are fantastic, and they each have their core area of expertise. And the plan is to grow that team as we actually bring in more clients into the business. And like I said, ultimately, when I'm not busy doing that, I'll be picking up the pen again and finishing off my book about pricing.
When can we expect that book?
Well, I'm hoping at the moment. So the first draft should be ready at the end of the summer, and then round about October time, by the time I've gone through the publishing process. So it will be out there at some point.
How do you start the process? Do you first write and then search the publisher? Do you first get a contract with the publisher, then you write?
For me, it's about the process of generating, ideas, and then kind of refining that process. So take, for example, the pricing side of things. It used to be kind of it's one core element of my program. So we deal with 3 core areas: product, pricing, and the sales side of things. What happened was, though, people seemed to be, when I went out and did speaking engagements, they were most interested in the pricing side of things because it's something that not a lot of people talk about, especially the mindset and psychology around sort of value systems and people's fear of like money and the sales process. So So for me, when I started doing my pricing talk, all of a sudden, like the ideas people just wanted more of it. So what I actually ended up doing was the first draft of the book starts with me doing, for example, a 40 to 60 minute presentation. I record it, I get it transcribed. That's where the start of the book comes from. And then gradually I layer on different ideas into that sort of basic structure. And then from there, I then, will pitch it to I actually do a lot of, I got a publisher for my first book. I self-published the second. I'm probably going to self-publish this one as well. So I don't have to go through that painful process of pitching. But my marketing person has suggested, actually, I do send it out to a couple of publishers just to see if they'll pick it up as well.
So self-publishing, because at the end the distribution is on your plate anyway, or?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. It's really interesting. I mean, we could do a whole episode talking about books, but a lot of traditional publishers and even hybrid publishers still expect the author to do the marketing. So I was kind of like, well, if I'm going to be doing the marketing side of it anyway, I might as well just own the rights to my book. And I've got kind of quite a good following, a brilliant tribe behind me now who are kind of hungry for more content. So the marketing side of it is just, I ran a marketing agency for 12 years, so it's kind of easy, and it means that I control kind of the distribution side of it. I give an awful lot of the books away because I just want to get it into as many hands as I possibly can. And it's a good way to engage people. I liken it to like, I couldn't be in 100 different homes on a Sunday telling people about pricing, whereas my book, I can send out 100 books in a week and people could be reading that on a Sunday morning, over their coffee. And so that's why the power of books is so strong. And I'm a bit of a control freak, basically. I want to manage the process.
Cool. Who should be my next guest on the show?
Well, you can see the book behind me there. So it's called Entrepreneur Revolution and the guy is called Daniel Priestley. He has like a really unique way of looking at the world. He's got 4 books out as well himself. He's got a great program called Key Person of Influence. And his whole thing is about making an impact on the world, like business for good. So Dan would definitely bring an awful lot to your podcast.
Thank you so much. Where can people read about what you are creating, stay in touch with you? Where's the best social media to catch up with you?
So what I've done is I've created a little page on my website, so people can go to fearless.biz/sprint. You'll be able to go and apply for a free copy of Take Your Shot. If people are in the UK, I'll happily post out a paperback copy of it. Overseas, it will be a PDF only, I'm afraid. But and then all of my social media links are on there. But if you look up Robin M for Mark Waite, you'll find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, it's been my pleasure.